The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy. They're open to customers. Play just $5. Get $100 bonus funds. Use the promo code SGPN. And welcome, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Sunday night, November 2nd, around 10:40 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Moselle Open once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the two tournaments taking place over the next week in Athens and in Metz. We're going to break down the outrights. We have quarter odds, 7 out of 8 quarters. So we're going to get into those in a second before we get into our actual outright picks to win the event. Then we'll get into the lock and dog picks for the first round. Before we get into any of that, though, a brief reminder: support the show by subscribing on YouTube. Reminder, also rating and review on Spotify or Apple. And a reminder, you can also check out the SGPN merch store for a lot of great tennis merch. We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs, different colors, very affordable. I think you'll enjoy the selection we have. Check it out on the merch store. Plus, a reminder for the actual SGPN content: the NFL, MLB, NBA, college football, and NHL are all live, and we've got podcasts giving out free picks for everything. Subscribe to the SGPN feed to catch every episode wherever you do get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, you name it. But check out the SGPN feed to catch every episode wherever you do get your podcast. So, starting off with the recap of what happened in the last episode, we did skip the final for Paris because, to be honest, Sinner was about minus 1,100, and I feel like everyone thought he was going to win. So I didn't bother. I just thought it was a waste of time. So I didn't bother recording an episode there. Apologies if you were waiting for it, but Sinner being minus 1,000 in an ATP final felt like a waste of time. So either way, I ended up not recording it. But for the recap of the semis, was not good for the lock and dog. For the lock, we had Zverev over half a break at minus 150 against Sinner. Wasn't close. He won one game in the entire match. Lost 6-0, 6-1. Zverev was clearly injured. He couldn't move, did not quit, and he ended up losing. He had a 15-30 at one point, but it didn't really matter. Point is, Zverev was below 100%. I'd say he was at about 40, and he got buried, so didn't end up getting the winner there. For the dog, pretty annoying loss. We ended up going with the same game parlay for the team totals with Bublik and Felix, both to go over their individual team totals at 12.5 at plus 153. It looked good. First, I went to a tie break, and Bublik led 4-1. In the second set after losing the first set. So we're actually on a very good pace to win. And then Bublik lost 5 games in a row. So he went from up 4-1 to losing 6-4, and Felix won in straight sets. Can't really call it a brutal beat, but anytime you have a 7-6 followed by the guy who lost the first set, leading 4-1 in the second set, you're in a great spot. And then Bublik unraveled and lost 5 games in a row. So picked up a loss there for the dog. Now, for the recap of the final, Sinner won. What else is new? We ended up giving him out to win the event at plus 125. Went back to all reliable. We picked Sinner and Alcaraz to win. When they're in the same event together, we pick nobody else, and we collect profit. That's kind of how it goes. We had Sinner and Alcaraz to win the event. Alcaraz lost first round. Didn't matter, as Sinner did eventually win the entire event pretty easily. Sinner had some illness or injury concerns earlier in the tournament. Never dropped a set, so really never threatened at all. Beat Berg, Cerundolo, Shelton, Zverev, and Felix all in straight sets. So pretty straightforward for the new number one player in the world. Sinner did surpass Alcaraz again for number one. Congrats to him. But Sinner faced 0 break points. He won 91% of his first serve points. It was pretty anticlimactic. Felix got broken in the first game of the entire match, and that was the only break of the entire match. We know that Paris was playing more slowly than I'd say people anticipated, but it didn't matter. Everyone held, and Sinner was never really threatened. So Sinner ended up winning 7-6, 6-4, 6-4, 7-6. So really never a doubt for him. Had a couple of breakpoint chances in the second set. Didn't convert, but it didn't matter in the end. Sinner's too good, end of the day. And Felix played well. We'll see what happens over the rest of his calendar season. He was fighting for Turin. He officially dropped out of Metz. So we'll see how Musetti does to potentially surpass him. But either way, Felix did lose in the final. Played well. No shame in that. But Sinner's too good. And Sinner eventually did win in straight sets. I feel like even though I didn't do an episode on the match, it was very predictable. I know the spread was 4.5. Felt pretty large. I saw Sinner team totals at 12.5. I think most people like the over on that. And they like Felix to hang in there. Yet at the same time, nobody thought Felix would win. and Sinner won in straight sets. So it was kind of the exact prediction you might have expected going in. Just Sinner winning one close 7-6, 7-5 set, and Sinner coasting in straight sets. It's what we got. So either way, once again, nice job by Sinner, new number one in the world again, and we'll see how long he holds on to it, and we'll see how he looks entering the ATP Tour Finals at the end of the year. Anyway, looking at any other, I'd say, news worth talking about, if you are following the Women's Tour, of course, WTA Finals are happening right now, and first of all, shout out to Mboko, who was struggling after her insane run in the 1000 event earlier this year in Canada, and then she kind of went off the grid, came back, and she won a 250, beat Buxa in the final in 3 sets. So nice job by her. For the WTA Tour Finals, we saw Pegula look good, ended up beating Goff in 3 sets today. Shout out to Goff, 17 double faults. Yeah, that's very on brand for her. You saw Sabalenka kill Paolini, so that was something that was, I'd say, kind of expected, but still only dropped 4 games in the process. Besides that, though, Swiatek destroyed Keys, and Rybakina destroyed Anisimova. So nothing too shocking so far. Rybakina, we know, very solid hardcourt player. Swiatek, number one player, either her or Sabalenka. They all won in straight sets, but Pegula beating Goff in 3 was a bit surprising, but Goff double faulting 17 times was definitely not surprising at all. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual recap of what happened. Once again, sorry I didn't record an episode if you were waiting for it, but Sinner being minus 1,000 in an ATP 1,000 final, what's the point? I just feel like at the end of the day, if you're looking at Sinner, who's probably going to win, because Felix, no offense, I don't think is good enough to beat Sinner. We saw him win a set against him in the U.S. Open before losing in 4, but I think everyone thought Sinner was going to win, and the price tag made him unbettable, so I didn't bother. So apologies once again, but it is what it is. We'll move on into what could be 2 very open 250s. If you're trying to win some outrights, by the way, for the rest of the tennis season, you're running out of time. Not many actual tournaments left on the calendar for the update here. The only 2 events left in Athens and Metz. Then you have the ATP Finals taking place the week after. So we're going to go right into the ATP Finals after we end up finishing with Athens and Metz. And of course, you have the Next Gen Finals taking place in the middle of December. But that's it. So the final ATP ATP Finals, Next Gen Finals events are happening right now. We're going to get into that in a few minutes. Before we get into the actual preview of Athens and Metz, a reminder brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBookie.ag. So using to bet on football, basketball, tennis, hockey, you name it. College basketball, by the way, starting tomorrow. So if you want to also bet on that, you can. And a reminder, they're prop builder, so you can check out props for different sports as well. You can also use crypto for funding your account and for getting nice payouts with crypto at MyBookie.ag. Use code SGPN when you sign up for 100% bet bonus up to $500 for customers. MyBookie.ag, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to by Novig, which is the number one prediction market for sports in America. Get some great prices, reduced juice for different bets that you can definitely find. Novig's available in 3 couple states. Make sure it's available in your state. Download the app. When you do so, get $50 when you spend just $5 if you use our promo code SGPN and then actually Novig, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Scam Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the Paris final, where Sinner ended up winning again. Time to move on into the preview of Athens. Now, normally, for the events, I will start off with a brief history recap of who ended up winning in previous years, who made the final, etc. Not too much to go with here, because the event is brand new. So we have no career winners, and first time it's being held, this is taking over for Belgrade. So if you're looking for Belgrade, not a thing anymore. Now we have a hard court event in Athens. We'll see how it goes. First event in Greece for the ATP for a while. I want to say like 20 years, give or take. But the point is, we're back here in Athens. Hopefully it ends up being a fun inaugural season for the tournament. Now, for the actual history, once again, it's pretty non-existent. Looking briefly at how the qualifying went, the court speed seemed decent. I'm not going to say that they were very fast, like Cincinnati, but they also weren't very slow, like Paris. I'd say somewhere in the middle, so kind of just a default hard court for me. We might see it potentially play a bit differently, because qualifying, you also have some, I'd say, underwhelming players. We'll see how the elite servers do on the courts here. Seems to be, I'd say, maybe a little bit above average, but pretty close to it. So it should be a pretty regular hard court tournament. Now, for the first quarter, Djokovic is here, by the way, in the event. Djokovic is minus 188 to win the first quarter. Borges is minus 450. You have Tabilo at 5-1, Spizzirri at 10-1, and De Gier at plus 2,000. So for the path, Joker has the bye. Then he plays Tabilo. He's actually been good against him in the past. Then you have, on the other half, you have Borges, who won today, playing the winner of De Gier and Spizzirri. So, look, Joker should win the quarter, obviously. Last time we saw him, though, he got injured in the Six Kings Slam, and he had to retire in the middle of, I believe it was the third place match against Fritz. So we haven't seen him in a couple weeks, but either way, point is pretty favorable draw for him. Also important for Djokovic, the guy who completed tennis has a tournament that he's never won before. So once again, they basically added some DLC. If you actually are a gamer, you know what I'm talking about. They added some extra content for Joker to potentially win. So technically, Djokovic has not won every ATP event anymore because they added a new one. So we'll see if Djokovic can add this one to his collection. Now, Djokovic should win the quarter. Simply put, I like him at minus 188. It's expensive. I think he should win it. However, since the last time we saw him, he was injured. I am going to leave a little bit of a plan B option. Tabilo at 5-1. He's been pretty good against Djokovic in the past, and if you think Djokovic is going to struggle, I think it might be early on. Maybe he comes out rusty. Tabilo had a marathon win against Walton in the first round, but they faced off 2 times in their careers, both on clay within the last year or so, and Tabilo's 2-0. Now, once again, both on clay, so not exactly a fair comp, but Tabilo won't be intimidated, so I don't mind him at 5-1 as a long shot for the quarter, but Djokovic should win, but in case he's not 100%, I kind of went for a backup option. Moving on to the second quarter for this one. Nagashima is the favorite at plus 120. Opelka at 3-1. Giron 4-1. Hanfmann 5-1. Caprivo at 12-1. Martinez 18-1. And Ivanov at 66-1. So for the actual draw, Nagashima's path is pretty good. Has a bye, then Giron and Martinez. Giron's not been good lately. Martinez has been god-awful lately. Nagashima should be favored. I looked at the head-to-head numbers. Nagashima is, I believe, undefeated against Giron. I think he's 2-0. Might be 3-0, but I know that he has a winning record against Giron. For the other half, though, I mean, Opelka got a pretty lucky draw because Capriva is a lucky loser who filled in, who's not really that great on hard court, filled in for Morozin. Morozin, Opelka would have been a good match, but instead we got Capriva, who's more of a clay guy. So we'll see how Opelka looks. Decent favorite there. Hoffman has been pretty decent lately. With the qualifying, look good. Ivanov's a complete unknown. So you're looking at a couple of names that look, I'd say, familiar. But the question is, how much do you trust these guys to actually make a good run? Now, for the path, I got to mention Nakashima at plus 120. I mean, the draw is very nice. A bye followed by Giron or Martinez. He's going to be a pretty decent favorite in that second round match. So I do like the plus 120 tag. Still a good hard court player, not a good returner. Still a good server, though. I think he can play well in the indoor hard courts here. So I don't mind Nakashima at plus 120. Now, most people will probably make a case for Opelka because he has a lucky loser, followed by Hanfmann or Ivanov. But I think Hanfmann versus Opelka in the second round kind of feels like a guarantee. Hanfmann's like minus 1,400 against Ivanov, and I believe Opelka's like minus 3,400. So I think Hanfmann's got value at 5-1. I think him versus Opelka would be a very solid serve battle. You might see a couple breakers in there. Hanfmann's been pretty good. And the fact is, through qualifying, he didn't drop a set. I thought he looked pretty sharp. And I do think Opelka being $2 cheaper than Hanfmann does not feel like correct pricing. Nakashima owns Opelka. He's 3 in a lifetime. I know Hanfmann lost to Nakashima earlier this year in 3 sets, but he actually pushed Nakashima to the brink, and I do think that Hanfmann has a better chance of beating Nakashima than Opelka does, based on the head-to-head records. So give me Hanfmann at a better price, who's more competitive in the head-to-head than Opelka against Nakashima. So I'll go with Hanfmann at 5-1 as my second choice for the second quarter. Moving on to the third quarter of the event. So we already had this quarter start, as Korda did be Popperin in the first round in 3 sets on Sunday. Now, for the actual pricing, because Korda already won a match, he's a decent favorite to win the quarter. Plus 120, Darderi's 333, Fernley's at 450, Majcik's at 650, Kecmanovic is 750, and Zoomer is 14-1. So Korda, once again, a bit of a head start. So for the sake of this outright market, imagine he has a bye because he already won. Now, Darderi does have the actual bye, so he's already into the second round. Kekmanovic and Majcik is actually a very good match. That should be very close, but I'm going to go for Korda at plus 120. I think his game translates well to the courts here. We haven't really seen much of a sample from the courts, but seems pretty balanced. It feels like it might have some type of blend between firepower and consistency. Korda, I know, can be, of course, a head case, but he does have overall solid hardcourt talent, and I think that should translate to the courts here. But I like the draw for Korda. You're looking at Majcik and Kekmanovic on the other side, potentially beating Darderi. He has DeZumer or Fernley. Fernley's not been good for months, and DeZumer we know is more of a clay guy. But he did push Felix to a final set breaker in Brussels a couple weeks ago. But Korda would be a decent favorite against either guy. I like the path, and beating Popyrin. Popyrin's not very good right now, but still has firepower, still a decent hardcourt player. Good win for Korda. I'll take him at plus 120 there. However, since it is Korda, we need a plan B. I'll go with Majcik at 650. Kekmanovic might beat him in the first round, but I think whoever ends up winning that match should beat Darderi, who's still not a great hardcourt player, better than he was in previous years, but still not great at it. The problem is for Kekmanovic, I just don't trust the mental toughness that he possesses, and we saw that in a couple of matches where he was just coasting and really wasn't going for many balls. I'm concerned about his actual motivation and his actual mental headspace. So I'll go for Majcik, who should have beaten Shelton. He missed that forehand volley at the net a couple weeks ago against Shelton. Could have been a good signature win for him. Point is, though, I think he's a good all-around hardcourt player. He's got variety. He plays very hard, and I do think he'll wear down Kekmanovic over time based on his hustle. So I don't mind 650. Think he's a tricky player who can maybe pull this off. I don't mind him at plus 650 for the third quarter. Moving on to the final quarter, the Musetti quarter. Big event for Musetti as he's trying to pass Felix for a shot potentially in Turin. Very important for Musetti. Now he's minus 138 here. Dzanchop 650. Struff is at 7-1 for the qualifying. McDonald's at 8-1. Echeverry 8-1. Moore 9-1. And Wawrinka at 14-1. Overall, not many star players, but a couple of memorable names, and I think a pretty balanced quarter in general. It wouldn't shock me if somebody at a good price actually made it through. Musetti will have either Wawrinka or Dzanchop in the second round. I think he should win that one. Dzanchop can be tricky, but either way, Musetti should win. Moore Struff's actually a hell of a match. I think that should be close. Struff has the firepower. Moore does have the rally tolerance. We'll see what once again works out there. McDonald at Echeverry. I think Echeverry should win. McDonald's not been very good lately. Winter qualifying, we'll see how that goes. But Moore, Struff, McDonald, and Echeverry in the same immediate quartet. Not really a favorable draw for any of those guys, so I think I'm going to pass on them. I'm going chalk. I'll go for Musetti. I know Dzanchop can be very annoying when it comes to betting on or against, but Musetti's the better player, and the fact is Dzanchop, in theory, if he lost to Wawrinka, wouldn't be that shocking. I think he should win, but I do think Musetti, based on the draw in his immediate half of the quarter compared to Moore, Struff, McDonald, and Echeverry, the draw is very nice. I'll go for Musetti at minus 130 is my only choice for the fourth quarter. Moving on to the outrights to actually win the event. Now, for the odds here, you have Djokovic at plus 160. Once again, different lines, though, shop around. I'm using DraftKings for convenience. So plus 160 for Djokovic, 350 for Musetti. Korda is at 650. Nakashima is at 850. Tabilo is 18-1. Opelka is 20-1. Borges 22-1. Fernley 25-1. To be honest, not going to bother. Majcik's at 30-1. Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty chalky. Now, for the odds, I have to go Djokovic. I do think, if healthy, we know Djokovic is still a top 3, top 4 guy in the world. Good enough for me. Took some time off to recover after the King's Slam. I'll go for Djokovic here. I found a 170. I'll take that as my first choice. Pure chalk. But you know what? When you are the best player of all time and there's a new event that you have not won yet, I think you'll have some motivation to win because it's the only event right now you've never won. So give me Djokovic to complete the actual, I'd say to 100% ATP tennis again in his career for the second time. I'll go for Djokovic at plus 170 as my first choice. Now, Musetti, I get it's meaningful for him. He's trying to make it to Turin. However, do I think he's actually going to get there? No. I do think that he's not going to be Djokovic. 350 is way too cheap. I get Musetti once again has improved on hard court. 350 when Joker's in the event is just not the price I want for Musetti. Other side of the bracket, favorable quarter, I get that. At the same point, though, I really don't think 350 is an objectively speaking fair price I think Musetti should be like 6-1, give or take. I mean, 350 feels kind of egregious for a guy who's really not won many hardcore titles in his career. So I'll go for the pass option for Musetti. Now, court is interesting because 650 feels pretty cheap, but I did find a 10-1, and I'm going to take it. FanDuel a 10-1, which is a very rogue line. Most books had around 7 or 8. DraftKings, once again, is 650. I found a 10-1 on FanDuel, which I'm going to sign up for. Court is a good indoor hardcore player. We saw him beat Popper in the first round. I know that mentally he can self-destruct, but his highest seeded player in his quarter is Darderi. Quarter would be a decent favorite over Darderi in a hypothetical matchup in the quarters. And you have Musetti, who potentially could be his matchup in the semis. I'm curious who would actually be favored in that one. The point is Court at 10-1. If I find a rogue number, even if I don't really love the player, I'm going to take it for value. And I do think that Korda at 650 is not interesting. At 10-1, though, I'm interested. He has given Djokovic some competitive matches before. So if that ends up being the matchup, maybe Korda can find a way. I doubt it. But 10-1, I don't mind. I think it's a good price for a guy who has hardcore talent and a pretty decent draw. Moving on to Metz. So for this one, unlike Athens, we have a history for the event. Bonzi beat Nori in the final last year. Humbert beat Shevchenko. Year before that, Sonego beat Bublik. You might remember that one as being the random point where Bublik turned the racket upside down and hit a random shot with the handle of his racket and lost the point. So there you go. Kind of sums up old Bublik, but Sonego won that one, and Hurkacz beat Carreño Busta the year before that. So for the event in itself, pretty similar to what I said about Athens. I think Athens should play a bit quicker than Metz, but according to all of the court surface stats, seems pretty average from what I gathered. So I think you're looking at the actual finalists here. Decent amount of good ralliers. Bonzi and Nori in a final. Humbert and Shevchenko. Sonego won the event here. Once again, Carreño Busta made a final. So you have seen a kind of a blend between good serving and rallying, but ralliers have done well in years past. I believe Mickelson made the semis last year for reference. So if you're good at rallying, it should help you out. Not slow as hell, but still, I'd say a pretty neutral hard court, all intents and purposes. Now, for the first quarter, by the way, we have some serious news Armageddon for this actual event. A bunch of people dropped out, and we might get more. So for the first quarter, we have no odds. Full disclosure, I'll mention my thoughts, but no actual odds. So there you go. Excuse me. First quarter, you have Felix, who dropped out. Now, we saw him lose in the final in Paris. He is gambling on Musetti to not win the event in, once again, Athens, because he's fighting for the final spot in Turin. He jumped him. Not officially set in stone yet that Felix is going, but he's exhausted after playing a full 1,000 event, decided my body can't hold up. I'm not going to play. He dropped out. So we're going to see who takes his place, but for the sake of the first quarter, they never reopened odds. So that's kind of why we have a complete, I'd say, question mark for the odds for the quarter. But the quarter is very weak. You have Jacquet, Van Asche, you have Kaza, who ended up beating Manarino in the first round, and you have Royer versus Nori. Fun match in the first round between Royer and Nori. A reminder, Nori did end up beating Alcaraz in Paris, so he's in pretty good form, and Royer's been pretty good for the last couple of months on hard court. So for the quarter, once again, we don't have any odds, but I'll go with Kaza at whatever odds he's going to be, and I'll go for Nori as former champion, or former runner-up, I mean. I do think you're looking at Royer, who could beat him in theory with crowd support in Metz, but I think that Nori's game translates well to the courts here. If you lose, would I be shocked? No, it's Cam Nori. It wouldn't shock me at all, but I think Nori has some value as the defending runner-up, and I think that he should make a decent path for himself. I got Kaza and Nori with no odds. Apologies, but that's my thoughts for the first quarter. Moving on to the second quarter, we have odds for the remaining three. So for the odds in this quarter, you're looking at Caboli at plus 162, Rinderknech at 3-1, Sonego at 333, Gaston 5-1, Altmaier 7-1, and Choinsky at 25-1. Now, I think Caboli is the most talented player in this section. However, the problem obviously is the draw, because he has a bye, then either Choinsky or Sonego. Sonego Caboli is actually a really good match because, as mentioned before, Sonego won a title here. So that could be a coin flip match. Caboli can be very unpredictable. So can Sonego. I'll let the Italians destroy each other, simply put. So I'm going to stay away from both guys. Caboli I would have taken, but I didn't like the draw with Sonego, former champion there, waiting in the second round potentially. Not interested. I passed on both. However, we saw Gaston beat Ottman in the first round. Ottman's been kind of a mess physically for the last couple of months, especially after we saw him lose that 3-setter to Sinner. And forgot what event that was. But either way, point is we saw him lose a 3-setter to Sinner, and his body has not really cooperated since. But Gaston has not been very good this season, and you're Winterknech taking on Altmaier. Fun matchup in the first round. I think whoever wins that match actually might win the quarter. So Altmaier at 7-1 makes sense. But I'm going to go for Winterknech at 3-1. Crowd support, he's been good lately. He lost to Vacherot, of course, in the final in Shanghai. Lost to Vacherot again in Paris. But he's playing well. I think that he's having a pretty good, I'd say, career season for himself. And I do think Altmaier can be very, very prone to choking in matches. It wouldn't shock me if this turned into a marathon. But I do think 3-1 for the home crowd advantage there will help out. I'll go for him at 3-1. We saw that he made the final. He's made a couple of ATP semis before. Don't mind it, and I think the environment's good for him. Give me Winterknech at 3-1 as my only choice for the second quarter. Moving on to the third quarter. Now, Bublik, as of right now, is playing. Remains to be seen. We saw him lose 5 games in a row against Felix, and he's still fighting for an alternate spot in Turin. He also could finish the season top 10 in the world, so we'll see how he does. I believe he has to win the event here in order to actually make a top 10 confirmed to end the season. But as of right now, he's active. If he drops out, then it voids. What is what it is. So for the third quarter, Bublik minus 110, Pericard plus 333. Blocks is at 375. Kovacevic 850. Pizarro 12-1. Tabor 28-1. And Sacco at around 40-1. Now, Bublik's my choice, simply put. Best player here by a mile. And Pericard has not been very good the entire season. Been playing slightly better lately, but Bublik is better than him, objectively speaking. Bublik, once again, if he drops out, avoids, and you might want to go for Pericard instead. But for the actual quarter, it's very weak. I mean, Kovacevic made a couple finals this year, inconsistent. Blocks is a complete, I'd say, challenger guy. Pizarro qualifier, Tabor qualifier. Like, nobody here is worth a damn. Pericard, we know, is a one-trick pony. Bublik is a fringe top 10 guy in the world. I think he tries to make the top 10 to finish the season. So I like Bublik here, minus 110 by himself. I like the draw. I think it's a very weak quarter. I think it's a good opportunity for him to get the job done in the third quarter. Moving on to the fourth quarter, which might be the most open quarter, a pretty competitive quarter from top to bottom. So for the fourth quarter, this was initially the Medvedev quarter. Now, according to some reports, Medvedev dropped out. So we're going to see if that's actually true or not. I believe it is. I saw a different amount of sources confirming it. In theory, it might not have mattered because his kryptonite TN might be waiting for him in the second round. But as far as I know, Medvedev has dropped out. So that's why the quarter is very open. TN is the favorite to win the quarter at 187. So once again, it was Medvedev. Now it's not because he dropped out. TN plus 187, Moutet 250, Berrettini 3-1. You have a complete unknown at 650. Chargu. You have Hallis at 9-1, Vukic 18-1, and Blanchet at 22-1. Now, I said before, Ralliers have done pretty well so far in the event. Saw Nori make the final last year, for example. I'm going to go with a couple of Ralliers. There are a couple of good players in the quarter, but I am going to go with TN at 187. I like the draw. The point is, if Medvedev actually did drop out, which all reports say he did, then you have Blanchet, who is a massive favorite over, followed by a random unknown, which should be a decent price as well for TN. I think he has a very good draw into the quarter, so good enough for me. Now you have Moutet against Vukic and Berrettini against Hallis in the other half, so definitely tougher than what TN has. Now, Moutet, we know, has lost in a couple of finals this year. I'm going to take him, though, at 250. Home crowd, we know that he loves to get the crowd involved with his antics, and I think that he should beat Vukic. Berrettini was the tricky one because he has the firepower to be really good on it, of course, indoor hard courts, but I don't trust the fitness, and I think Moutet's variety can frustrate Berrettini. Now, Berrettini ends up hitting his serves, and he ends up hitting some monster forehands. He could win, but he could also drop out of any event he plays in. So I didn't really trust the fitness element for Berrettini. I'll go with Moutet instead at 250. He's played very well over the last couple of months. He ended up losing to Medvedev in a final in 3 sets a couple weeks ago on hard court. Good player overall. I'll go for those two guys as my choices for the fourth quarter. Moving on to the outrights to actually win the entire event. Now, for the actual odds here, Felix is still listed despite dropping out, so I'll skip him. Bublik at 350, Caboli at 9-1, Tien at 9-1, Moutet 12-1, Perricard 12-1, Berrettini at 14-1, Sonego at 16-1, you have Norrie at 16-1, Rinderknech at 16-1, Kaz at 16-1. That's basically it. If you want to go for the recent unknown who's been really good lately, Royer is at 22-1. So for the path, once again, for a couple of guys, I'm taking Bublik at 350. Motivation should be there. You could argue Bublik might coast and just enjoy the end of the season. I disagree. Bublik has shown a certain mental, I'd say, attentiveness that we didn't really know was there. We thought Bublik was kind of a drifter, a guy who would occasionally show up and show his talent, but mostly coast and punt matches like an idiot. This year he's been very, I'd say he's been consistently motivated, is the phrase I'll use. And I do think with him having a chance to reach the top 10 for the first time in his career to end the season, I think he goes for it. I'll go for Bublik at plus 350. The draw is nice, and I do think he's the best player in the field with Felix dropping out. So I like him here at 350 as my first choice. Now for my second choice, I'm going to go with, I have a couple of outrights, by the way. I'm going to go with Tien at 9-1. You could probably shop around, find better prices, but right now I only see DraftKings having odds posted, so you might have to wait on it, but you might get a better line once it gets posted. But Tien at 9-1, I think his game translates very well to the courts here. We know that he made the final on an indoor hard court, lost to Sinner in the process, but we know he can beat very good players. If I'm wrong with Bublik and either no-shows physically or mentally, the bottom half's kind of open with Medvedev dropping out, and Tien's draw to the quarter is very, very nice. So I'll go for Tien at 9-1. I'm going to throw in Moutet at 12-1 because I do think with him being a good indoor hardcourt player, with him having the French crowd behind him, I think he can beat Tien potentially. They had a bit of a marathon recently. Tien's good in the head-to-head against them, but it's only 2-1, I believe. Point is Moutet, I think at 12-1 is a decent price. He's been really close to winning a title this season, and I think Metz could be a decent opportunity for him. We have seen a Frenchman win the last 2 years with Bonzi and with Humbert, so maybe Moutet gets it done at 12-1. And you know what? For the last choice, give me Norrie at 16-1. Bit of a flyer there, defending runner-up. We saw him beat Alcaraz last week. I think the form's pretty good, but I am going to go with a couple outrights here. 3 similar players with Tien, Moutet, and Norrie. So I'm going to try to go into the rally skills resulting in winning. But once again, I got 4 outrights here for Metz because there's so many question marks with the actual dropouts and who's actually staying in. Bublik maybe drops out last minute. Who knows? But Medvedev dropped out. Felix dropped out. A lot of question marks here about the actual draw. I think it's open, and I'm going to bank on it. So once again, my outright choices for, once again, Metz, I'm going to go with Bublik at 350. I'm going to go with Tien at 9-1, Moutet at 12-1, and Norrie at 16-1. It's going to wrap it up for the show, though. A reminder, though, it's going to wrap it up for the outrights, actually. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the lock and dog, another brought to you by our sponsor, Arnold Fantasy. So you can do fantasy pick entries, chance to win 5,000 times your entry. Pick higher or lower in your favorite player stats. Also, check out the new offer they have for new customers. Play just $5. Get $100 bonus funds. Use the promo code SGPN. We're also brought to by Rhythm. So they're crushing in college football, NFL, and now they added NBA. They're giving away weekly cash prizes just for tracking your bets every week. So once again, check it out. Track bets, and you can get some money in return. Track 5 bets of the same type of model you built, and you can win $1K. Also, we have a promo code discount with Rhythm. Use code SGPN25. You download the app for a quarter first month. Download Rhythm. Once again, promo code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish going through the outrights for Athens and for Metz. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. So for the lock, I'm going to go to a matchup that looks very, very scary in the first round. But you know what? I got to back the actual spot. I'm going to look at the Giron match against Martinez, and I'm going to go with Giron in straight sets, or in other words, I'm going to go with Martinez to not win a set at minus 136. Now, FanDuel went rogue. FanDuel is this a 136. Every other book has Giron straight sets at about minus 150, minus 160. Now, Giron recently has not been very good. I'm aware of it. However, decent competition. So he faced off against Altmaier, ended up losing. Faced off against Shapo, lost in 3 sets. And Fokina, lost in 3 sets. Fokina we saw make the final in Basel, so we know he's a good indoor hardcourt player. Shapo won an indoor hardcourt title earlier this year in Dallas, so good indoor hardcourt player as well. Giron, has he been good this season? No, like I'm aware of it. However, I do think his actual game is best suited for hard courts, and I do think that with the recent tough schedule with Altmaier, Shapo, and Fokina, winning a set against Fokina and Shapo, I think it's a pretty good opponent for him to beat up on to get some confidence back. Martinez has been awful recently. He's a clay specialist playing on hard court. It's been an ugly going for him. He's 1-9 in the last 10 matches overall. He's lost 4 straight matches in straight sets, and I believe he has lost 6 in a row on hard court. So Martinez has been really going through it, physically not playing that well. He's getting buried match in, match out, 4 straight in straight sets, and now he's against Giron, who can be a head case, but still a pretty good overall hard court player, and we know that he has some rally tolerance as well. Martinez, not a great server, think he'll struggle here, but a guy who's lost 9 of the last 10, 4 straight in straight sets to not win a set, compared to the market, saving about 20 cents. Great price. I got to take it for value. Give me Giron in straight sets at -136 as my lock for the show. For the dog, I'm going to go to a matchup between Kovacevic and Tabor. Give me the over 2.5 sets at +135. Kovacevic has been a marathon man. He never makes it easy on himself, despite making it to 2 finals this season on the ATP Tour in Montpellier and in Mexico. But Kovacevic has lost at least 1 set in 13 straight matches. 13. He's had a bunch of 3-setters in there, but the point is he's a favorite in the first round against Tabor. He has dropped sets regularly, 13 straight. I'll gamble on that. Kovacevic, we know, can be very up and down. I see that happening here, so I do like the historical trend here in favor of the over. Plus, Tabor has had a couple of marathons recently. 3 of his last 4 matches did not end in straight sets. I'm going to play the trends here. Kovacevic, though, is a favorite, is really not that trustworthy. He tends to win, but when he does, it's a 3-set marathon. And the fact is, when you've lost a set in 13 straight matches, I think that the over 2.5 sets is value. I'll go for that as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock and dog picks. The lock's going to be on Martinez to not win a set, or in other words, Giron 2-0 at -136 on FanDuel. For the dog, I'm going to go with Kovacevic and Tabor over 2.5 sets at +135. So we'll wrap it up for the show. Like once again, for the quarters in Athens and in Metz. Till next time, you can find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, the SGPN Tennis Game Podcast channel. And a reminder, check out the podcast, Spotify, and Apple. Leave a rating and a review. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.